Ever felt like you're just drowning in study notes, especially for something huge like the SPHR exam?
Mm.
It's not just about cramming facts, right? It's making them stick, understanding how they apply.
Oh, absolutely. That's the real challenge because the SPHR, it isn't really a test of just what you know. It's testing your strategic thinking. You need to know the why and the how it drives business value.
Exactly. And that's what this SPHR deep dive is all about. We've waded through the materials for you, pick out the absolute must-knows, our goal today. Cut through that noise, spark those little aha moments, and really lock in the key stuff. Strategic HR, leadership, ethics, talent, compliance, all of it.
Yeah, think of us as your guide to connecting those dots. We'll pinpoint the crucial differences, look at how things work in practice, and give you those mental frameworks, the kind that help not just on the exam, but in your actual job. We want you walking away feeling confident, ready for those tricky scenario questions the SPHR loves.
Okay then, ready to turn all that information into real understanding? Let's dive in.
The strategic imperative of HR leadership.
So let's start big picture. The SPHR really hammers home strategic leadership, doesn't it? It's more than just the day-to-day HR stuff.
Oh, absolutely foundational. I mean, look at the weighting. Leadership and strategy, that's 33% of the exam score. A huge chunk. That tells you right there they're looking for people who can think ahead, influence the C-suite, align the people stuff with the business goals. And SPHR isn't just managing HR tasks. They're using people strategy to actually drive the business forward.
Right. So how does an HR leader even start laying that strategic groundwork? Where's the starting line?
It often kicks off with solid environmental scanning. This is HR really looking around inside and out to see what forces are going to affect people. And two key tools here are SWOT and PESTLE. With SWOT, you're looking internally, first your strength, like maybe a great HR team or super low turnover, and your weaknesses, like maybe skill gaps. But then you scan externally for opportunities and threats. So for HR, maybe SWOT shows a talent pipeline problem because the market's tight, or maybe a strong company culture you can leverage.
And PESTLE helps with that external view, but it's only external, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
PESTLE is purely outside the company walls. Each letter stands for something: political new laws, trade stuff, economic inflation, growth, social demographics like an aging workforce or changing diversity views, then technological new tech like AI, legal, which we'll get into more, and environmental. So SWOT maps your immediate competitive space, but PESTLE gives you that wider macro view, helps anticipate those longer-term shifts.
Okay, this is where I find it gets really interesting. Once you've got that lay of the land, how does HR actually, plug into the company's big competitive strategy?
Yeah, that brings us to Porter's generic business strategies. Super important for SPHR folks to get this. If the company's going for cost leadership, HR needs to drive efficiency. That means things like productivity training, smart scheduling, holding on to top performers you're not constantly rehiring, which is expensive. But if the strategy is tell around, differentiation offering something unique, HR's focus shifts. Now it's about innovation, quality. So recruiting for fresh ideas, heavy investment in L&D to build those cutting-edge skills. And if it's a focus strategy, HR has to deeply understand the very specific talent needed for that niche market. The key takeaway isn't just knowing the strategies, it's understanding that HR's talent decisions either boost or undermine that core strategy. HR isn't just support crew, it's enabling the whole business model.
Okay, that makes sense. Strategy set, HR's role defined. But how do we know if any of these HR issues are actually, working? How do we measure it?
Right, measurement is key. That's where key performance indicators, KPIs, come in. And we look at two main kinds. You've got leading indicators, which are predictive, like maybe high employee engagement scores predict lower turnover down the line, or training hours predict future skill levels. Then there are lagging indicators. These measure outcomes after they happen, things like your actual turnover rate, revenue per employee, cost per hire. To link these back to the big strategy, companies often use HR scorecards. You might know the Kaplan-Norton balanced scorecard idea. It looks at things from financial, customer, internal process, and learning growth angles. So HR might track, say, the ROI on leadership training under financial or time to fill roles under internal process.
Gotcha. But let's talk brass tacks. How do we show the financial return, the ROI on people?
Yeah, that's the human capital ROI. Now, there's a formula for it. Revenue minus operating expense minus comp and benefits, divided by comp and benefits. But the concept for an SPHR leader is the crucial part. HR isn't just a cost center, it's a strategic investment. Being able to show that ROI, even conceptually, is how you prove HR's value and earn that seat at the table. Show how people's strategies hit the bottom line.
All right, let's try a quick knowledge check based on that strategic thinking from your materials. The resource-based theory of the firm claims that an organization's competitive advantage is determined by its A. Core capability, B. Relationship with suppliers and buyers, C. Superiority over rival firms, D. Ability to limit new entrants into the industry. What's the strategic HR angle here?
The answer is definitely A, core capability, and here's why. Core capabilities are those unique internal things often tied directly to your people, your talent, your culture that competitors just can't easily copy. It's what your company does exceptionally well that gives you that sustainable edge. This theory really underpins why strategic HR focuses so much on developing internal talent and unique capabilities.
Navigating the ethical compass in decision-making.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. Moving from that high-level strategy down to the very foundation, ethics and governance. What's HR's role here? Seems like HR has to be the conscience, right?
You nailed it. HR is often called the ethical compass. We're stewards of the organization's ethics and culture. Our core functions involve writing codes of conduct, doing ethics training, advising managers when they face ethical dilemmas. But the really critical part, it's stepping in when leadership might be heading down an unethical path, ensuring people are treated fairly, setting up confidential ways for people to report issues like hotlines, and investigating complaints impartially. We really do set the ethical tone.
And when you talk about fairness, are there different kinds we should be thinking about for trust and all that?
Yeah, we usually break it down into three types. First is distributive fairness, basically. Our resources and rewards handed out fairly. Think pay, equity, promotions. Second is procedural fairness. Are the processes themselves fair and transparent, like are hiring policies or disciplinary actions applied consistently to everyone? And third is interactional fairness. That's about how people are treated with respect, honesty, dignity, and communication. You really need all three for a truly ethical, trusting workplace.
And what about specific ethical hotspots HR often deals with?
Oh, two big ones are definitely workplace privacy and conflicts of interest. With privacy, it's that balancing act. The employer has legit needs to monitor things, maybe for security or productivity. But employees have reasonable expectations of privacy. The key, transparency. Be clear about what's monitored and why. Conflicts of interest pop up when someone's personal interests could improperly sway their professional judgment. Like a manager hiring their cousin or making decisions that benefit their side hustle. HR needs clear policies for disclosing and managing these conflicts. Often, the person just needs to step away from that particular decision.
Let's bring in a specific law here that really hits on ethics, Sarbanes-Oxley, or SOX. How does that impact HR?
All right, SOX. It came about after those big corporate scandals, aiming for more financial transparency, especially in publicly traded companies. Section 404 is a big one. It makes management assess and report on their internal financial controls every year. HR gets involved by making sure controls around payroll and benefits are tight and providing compliance training. But the really interesting ethical piece for HR is Section 806. This gives whistleblower protection. It protects employees in public companies who report fraud from getting fired, harassed, demoted, any kind of retaliation. OSHA handles those complaints. It sends a powerful message. Speak up if you see something wrong. Think about past scandals, like Wells Fargo, where pressure led to bad behavior. SOX and HR's role in upholding it is about creating a climate where that doesn't happen, where integrity wins.
Okay, so beyond the rules and laws, what about, well, how our own brains can trip us up in decision-making, especially in groups?
Cognitive biases, yeah, they're sneaky and powerful. An SPHR leader absolutely needs to watch out for them. A classic one is escalation of commitment. That's when you keep pouring resources into a failing project or decision because you've already invested so much or your ego's tied up in it. Knowing when to cut your losses is hard but crucial. Then there's groupthink. That's when the pressure to agree within a group becomes so strong that it overrides realistic appraisal of alternatives. Dissent gets squashed, everyone nods along, and you end up with bad decisions. To fight these, you can use tools like the Delphi technique that uses anonymous questionnaires and feedback rounds to get consensus without the face-to-face pressure, or the nominal group technique, NGT, where people generate ideas silently first, then share in a structured way before discussing and voting. These help make sure different viewpoints actually get heard.
Okay, let's test that ethical reasoning again. Scenario time. A manager argues for using pirated software, saying, look, everyone does it, it saves us money, it's good for the company, this illustrates. Your options are A, utilitarian reasoning, HR upholds the law. B, role morality, HR should agree for profit. C, virtue ethics, HR praises resourcefulness but corrects. D, conflict of interest, HR needs disclosure. What's the SPHR take?
The answer here is A. The manager is using utilitarian thinking, focusing only on the outcome, saving money, to justify something wrong. For an SPHR Pro, the clear path is to uphold duty-based ethics. You stick to the company's code of conduct and, obviously, the law. The potential savings just don't justify the legal and ethical breaches.
Talent acquisition and management strategic people practices.
All right, let's talk talent, getting the right people onto the team. SPHR focuses on strategic recruitment. What does that actually mean? More than just posting jobs, I assume.
Oh, way more. Strategic recruitment is about proactively shaping your workforce. It means treating your employer brand and your employee value proposition, EVP, as real strategic assets. Your employer brand is your reputation out there, what potential hires think of you. It's like the curb appeal.
Yeah.
Your EVP is the actual deal employees get inside, the whole package. Pay, benefits, career growth, work-life balance, the culture. It's the experience inside the house. And the crucial thing for an SPHR leader, authenticity. That EVP has to be real. If it's not, you won't attract or keep the best people. It has to be a genuine differentiator.
So if that inside-the-house experience isn't great, it spills over and hurts your brand with candidates.
Absolutely. A bad candidate experience, even for people you don't hire, can really tank your employer brand. People talk, they leave reviews online. The flip side. A good experience can turn rejected candidates into fans, maybe even future hires who come back later. Every single interaction matters.
Okay, so you've attracted candidates. Now, selection. How do we make sure our methods are, well, good, fair, accurate, actually predicting who will succeed?
Yeah, this is where reliability and validity are critical. Reliability is about consistency. Does the test or interview give similar results over time? Validity is about accuracy. Does it actually measure what it's supposed to measure, and does it predict job performance? There are different types like content validity, criterion-related validity, best practice, structured interviews. These use job-related questions, asked the same way to every candidate, scored against set criteria. Much more defensible and effective than just chatting. And, super important, train interviewers. They absolutely cannot ask illegal questions about age, family status, religion, health, national origin, and so on. We use pre-employment tests too, cognitive skills tests. But remember, polygraphs, lie detectors are generally a no-go for most private companies under the Employee Polygraph Protection Act.
What about background checks? Seems like the rules there are always changing.
They are complex, definitely. You need meticulous compliance. The Fair Credit Reporting Act, FCRA, requires consent and specific notices before you take negative action based on a report. Plus, you have all the ban-the-box laws popping up, limiting when you can ask about criminal history. And if someone does have a record, you need an individualized assessment to avoid disparate impact claims. Don't forget negligent hiring, too, if you hired someone you knew or should have known was a risk. Oh, and for the exam, remember records retention. Keep application sharing stuff for at least a year. I-9s. 3 years after hire or 1 year after termination, whichever is longer.
That was a lot of detail. Okay, quick check on internet recruiting from the sources, which is not true. A, more than half of all new hires come from the internet. B, web-only applications might adversely impact minorities. C, internet applications might swamp you with too many candidates.
Okay, the one that's not necessarily true, based on our materials, is A. The claim that more than half of all new hires are from internet sources isn't stated as a definite fact. It's huge, yes, but maybe not that universally dominant. But B and C, those are real potential issues HR needs to manage. Ensuring access for everyone and having systems to handle volume are important considerations.
So we got the right people.
Yeah.
Now, how do we keep them performing well, keep them engaged, keeping them?
That's the job of a good performance management system. And keyword there is system. It's not just the once-a-year review. It's a continuous cycle. Planning goals, coaching, evaluating progress, rewarding achievements, and it has to be aligned with the organization's goals. For engagement and retention, here is a fascinating insight. People often quit their managers, not their companies. So the quality of that direct leader is huge. Alongside that, you need solid career development paths, competitive total rewards, good recognition programs, and support for work-life balance. We can also look at reward theories like equity theory, how people compare their input-output ratio to others. And crucial, using employee feedback. Don't just collect it, summarize it, share it back, and actually act on it to make improvements.
Involving employees more directly, getting their ideas.
Great point. For the SPHR exam, self-directed work teams are often highlighted as a best practice. These are small, empowered groups, often with informal leadership, very responsive to change, seen as very effective. You also have quality circles, which are voluntary groups that meet to discuss productivity or quality improvements. But the self-directed teams usually get top marks for agility and autonomy.
Let's try this scenario then. A group meeting regularly to develop new production procedures and improve product quality is called A. Labor Management Committee, B. Quality Circle, C. Autonomous Work Team, D. Shared Suggestion Team. What's the answer? And any SPHR nuance?
Okay, based purely on that definition, the most direct answer is B, quality circle. That's exactly what they do. But, and this is the SPHR nuance, while B is correct for the definition, remember that self-directed work teams, which is similar to C, autonomous work team, are often framed as a best practice on the exam. Why? Because they generally have broader scope, more decision-making power, and are seen as more agile. It's about knowing the different models and their perceived effectiveness.
Critical legal compliance and labor relations.
All right, let's tackle the legal minefield, as you call it earlier. Equal Employment Opportunity, EEO.
This feels like the bedrock of HR compliance. It absolutely is. Non-negotiable for an SPHR. It starts with the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They enforce Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. That's the big one. Prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Applies to employers with 15-plus employees. Covers everything: hiring, firing, pay, promotions, harassment, retaliation, and key evolution here. Sex discrimination now clearly includes pregnancy because of the PDA, Pregnancy Discrimination Act, and also sexual orientation and gender identity based on court decisions.
And what other major EEO laws are under the EEOC's umbrella?
They also enforce the ADEA, Age Discrimination and Employment Act, protecting workers 40 and over, the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act. With the ADA, remember, qualified individual and the duty to provide reasonable accommodations unless it causes undue hardship. Big point. No medical exams before a job offer. Only after and only if everyone entering that job category gets one. The ADA also broadened who counts as having a disability. And here's that super important recent update. The Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, PWFA, effective June 2023. This requires reasonable accommodations for limitations related to pregnancy or childbirth unless there's undue hardship. Applies to employers with 15-plus wheel. This is a big deal and definitely exam relevant.
Wow, yeah, that PWFA is crucial to know. What about protections for folks in the military?
That's covered by USERA Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. It protects service members' rights to get their jobs back after deployment. It uses the escalator principle. They should return to the job, pay, and status they would have attained if they hadn't left for service. Think promotions, raises they missed. USERA also gives them protection from being fired without cause for a certain period after they return. It ensures people aren't penalized for serving.
Okay, so if discrimination does happen, what's the difference between, say, disparate treatment and disparate impact, and that 80% rule?
Good question. Disparate treatment is intentional discrimination, treating someone differently because of their race, sex, religion, etc. Disparate impact is different. It's unintentional. A policy or practice looks neutral on its face, but it ends up negatively affecting a protected group disproportionately. The 80% rule, or 4/5 rule, is a guideline the EEOC uses to flag potential disparate impact. If the selection rate for a protected group, say women or a minority group, is less than 80% of the rate for the group with the highest rate, usually white men, it raises a red flag. It doesn't automatically prove discrimination, but it means the employer needs to investigate and justify the practice. And just one more thing on this retaliation. It's actually the #1 basis for charges filed with the EEOC. So training managers not to punish employees for making complaints or participating in investigations is absolutely critical.
And you mentioned another really big current update regarding affirmative action.
Yes, this is vital. Listeners really need to note this. According to our sources, Executive Order 11246, the one requiring federal contractors to implement affirmative action plans, has been revoked, effective January 2025. This is a major shift. It means those contractors will likely move back towards more traditional establishment-based affirmative action plans. It changes the compliance landscape significantly, and SPHR candidates need to be aware of this very current development.
Got it. Okay, shifting from individual rights to the collective side, unions, labor relations.
Right. Foundational laws here. The National Labor Relations Act, NLRA, also called the Wagner Act, protects employees' rights to organize, join unions, bargain collectively, and engage in concerted activities for mutual aid or protection. Then you have the Labor Management Relations Act, LMRA or Taft-Hartley. This added rights for employers and employees regarding unions and outlawed certain unfair union practices. When it comes to collective bargaining, some topics are mandatory wages, hours, pensions. These must be bargained over in good faith, and you can reach an impasse. Other topics are voluntary. If there's a strike over mandatory issues after an impasse, employers generally can hire replacement workers. And crucial for fairness, whether union or not, Grievance systems. Every place needs a way for employees to formally raise concerns about unfair treatment. They're just usually more structured in union shops.
Yeah.
We also see alternative dispute resolution, ADR. Use a lot of things like negotiation, mediation, arbitration to resolve conflicts outside of court.
And what about when someone leaves? Maybe not voluntarily. Key legal concepts around termination.
Yeah, several key things an SPHR needs to know. An implied contract might prevent firing if policies or statements created a reasonable expectation of job security. Retaliatory discharge is firing someone for doing something legally protected, like filing a workers' comp claim or reporting harassment, even if the employer didn't like it. Constructive discharge is when working conditions become so intolerable because of the employer's actions that a reasonable person would feel forced to resign. And we mentioned negligent hiring earlier, failing to do due diligence, and hiring someone who then harms others.
Okay, final knowledge check for this deep dive. Bargaining issues like wages, salaries, pensions are A. Mandatory can be bargained to impasse. B. Mandatory cannot be bargained to impasse. C. Voluntary can be bargained to impasse. D. Voluntary controlled by employer. What's the key takeaway?
The correct answer is A. Wages, salaries, pensions. These core economic issues are mandatory subjects of bargaining. Both sides must bargain over them in good faith if requested. And yes, you can reach an impasse on these issues, which could potentially lead to a strike or lockout. Knowing mandatory versus voluntary versus illegal subjects is fundamental for labor relations. Outro.
Wow. Okay, that was quite the journey, wasn't it? We really covered the SPHR map from high-level strategy and ethics down through talent practices and deep into the weeds of legal compliance and labor law. Hopefully this deep dive gave you some real clarity, maybe boosted your confidence, and locked in those key takeaways for the exam.
Absolutely. And remember the threads connecting it all. That constant need for strategic alignment, keeping ethics front and center, viewing performance management as ongoing, and knowing that legal compliance is the non-negotiable foundation. These aren't just topics to memorize for a test. They really are the pillars of smart, effective HR leadership.
So as you keep studying and preparing, here's something to think about. How are you going to use this knowledge? Not just to pass the SPHR, but to really step up as that ethical compass, that strategic partner in your own organization. How will you help shape a workforce that's not just ticking the compliance boxes, but is genuinely thriving, innovative, and engaged?
Be digging, keep asking questions, keep aiming for impact. We wish you the absolute best on your SPHR exam and, of course, in your ongoing HR career.